And all of these are basically Rhino modeling and then taken to Illustrator. So I'm going to be jumping from Rhino to Illustrator back and forth. I might even go and open InDesign as a, if it's the platform that you're introducing your diagrams and your photos and your text, I would just do that as a last step so you know the whole full cycle. Anyway, just to start, so there we go, this diagram right there is basically a surface. I deformed it and then some arrows. So the first thing I recommend is that you think of what are the things that you want to, let me go back to this, sorry. That you want to produce or design in or model in Rhino, and then what are the things that you're going to do in Illustrator? I would say the arrows are just easier in Illustrator, and the rest could be done in Rhino as model components. Another thing is that, oops, notice how there's a dash line for like a little surface there. Let me see if I can do this 200 right there. This guy. So there's a dash line for the original surface and then the deformed one. So let's go over it. So in terms of scale, because they're diagrammatic, they're not really, it's not important to think of the scale, but otherwise, if it is scale diagram, which they might be, you want to go to units, type units, and make sure these are the ones that you want. Again, typically inches or feet, and then feet and inches are the ones I use, but it's not that necessary for this particular occasion. So there's a plane, so that's the command plane. I will probably snap as the first step. That's what I typically do. Grid snap, click on this point, which is the origin point, and then I typically do not use the grid snap anymore. I can enter numeric value, or I can just press shift to create a perfect square. And I'm just gonna maybe just finish anywhere, it doesn't really matter. So there you go. That's the surface. And remember, I have to do zoom extend or zoom select by clicking Z and the S enter. Now, if I select any of these planes, there's this thing called control points on. Let me see if we can find that. Otherwise, we can type it, but it's always nice to show for the first time the button as well. Let me see, it's probably other curves. Here you go. This is control points on. So this is a command. Again, you can just select something, say control points. Let me see, so control points on, control points. Should be a command, no? Control points. It's not so easy as I thought. So this one, there you go. I'll select control points on. The tool, which is points on, I should just type points on, which is even faster. Select the object that you want to turn on the points. Those are the hidden points that define a geometry. That could be curve. I'm going to create a curve here. So notice that I'm clicking here, here, and here, and here, there. But once you finish the curve and press enter, those points disappear. When you select it, you can, touch those points and move them. But there's also the command, the possibility of turning the control point. So you say points on, and then select it, enter, and they turn on. I mean, back, not like a couple of years ago, you will have to turn on the control points in order to select the points. Now, when you select an object, they appear. So then you can deform a curve based on its control points. Same goes to surface. You see the points are not appearing, so you will say the points on, and so select geometry, and there you go. So you have those points that then you can deform the surface by moving those points. So that can be done typically with planes and surfaces. I don't think it works as well with solids, so I would just think of it as a way to deform a surface or a curve or a line, etc. Okay, so now if I do that again and again, points on, there's 4 points that define this geometry, and I can move that. I have some way to deform this surface, but notice how if I go back, this is a bit more deformed in that sense. So how do we go about that? There's one thing, both in curves. I'm going to create a curve here again. And probably you've seen this in the past. You can redefine the number of points that defines a curve or a surface. That's called like rebuilding. So rebuild, it's a command, rebuild, and you can select curves, extrusions, or surfaces to rebuild. Rebuild, just think of, I need more points so I can deform it in different ways. So if I select the curve, enter, it will pop up the rebuild properties panel, and basically you can set the number of points. You have a preview there. Notice how that preview is like chunky. That's because now it has from 11 that I had it before, it turns to 30. And the degree, I'll talk about it in a second, but it sets the curvature relaxedness. Okay, you can delete the input if you want or not. So you can say, give me 30 points, give me 3, and I'll do, actually I'm going to cancel that and do a couple of the same curve copies. So I'm going to just copy this guy and put it here and here. So you see the difference between degree 1, 2, and 3, and so on. So I'm going to say rebuild. This is going to be, give me 30 points. Notice how all those points are there. Degree 1. Degree 1 in Rhino is the same as polyline. And I'm going to say delete the input. Okay. So that is, it goes straight line between the points. Degree 1 curve equals a polyline. Rebuild. 2 and 3 are pretty much the same. So you set it to 3. It's what it sets is the relaxed tangent, meaning you have between points, you have a control mechanisms of tangents, and then between those, it just creates a relaxed curve. Okay. And if I do rebuild, and I go, for example, 10 degree, what it does is basically a much more relaxed curve, much more open in relation to the tangent situation. So that's the way how Rhino defines curvature, is by the degrees, the relaxedness between the control points. And the same goes for surfaces. If I actually copy this guy here, copy this guy here, I could say rebuild surface. Another panel comes up, and UV is basically the number of lines in one direction, in the U direction, and in the V direction. So the more UV point count, the more those lines, therefore the more points are being generated, and the degree for each of the directions. So I'm going to do a couple of settings. Let's say just 30 as well, just as an example, and degree 3. And you can say, okay. And notice now when I select the geometry, there's many more subdivisions that are called these lines. So when I turn on the points on, there are many little points, and that means that I can select a bunch of them and deform them. Okay, if I escape, the control points disappear. So think of each of these lines and curves right now. Each of those lines in this direction and this one, U and V, are actually degree 3. It's basically like first like this one, defining the geometry. There are many possibilities of rebuilding. As you can imagine, if you can change the number of points, but also the number of the degree, I could set this to 10, and let's say 20, just number of points, say okay, and I turn on the control point. There are less points, but when I change this, look how, no matter how much I move this, the surface is quite relaxed. in relation to the points, so it creates a softer curvature degree. So you can do variations of this and say rebuild, and let's say 10 and 10, and then 1 and 1 and 3. That means that in the U direction is going to be polylines, and then the V is going to be degree 3 relax. So I can turn on the control points. If I look at each of the directions, this direction, that curve is actually a polyline. It's chunky, no? But in this one, it's a degree 3 curve. So that's a combo of previous ones. Now, for the geometry, I just went back, Control C, that we're looking for. I'm looking just, not a big degree. Let's say rebuild, of course, because we need some of that, but maybe just 6 and 6 or 5 and 5 points, and then 3 and 3 to relax that. And I can turn on the control points. There are less points, so I can just do something like this one comes up, and this 4 maybe. I can take just this point, right? Just going to move these guys out to see it's better. Control select. So that could be the thing. As simple as that. That's just straightforward, I think. We can also do a plane, just snap to those two again. So we can do this one, have it. It's the second one now. What I did for all this is the same angle view. So what I think I did is just set view isometric, and I don't remember which ones. I don't think it's northeast, northwest either, until you find the one that you really like. This one, southwest. So select. You can save the view, say good for diagram. So I can always go back to this if I need to, and then you will start doing your make to the. I can also change the layer of the second. So right click, change of the layer, and you do a couple of make to this, make to the. Set the view because I don't need anything else. Viewport rectangle, that could be helpful because I'm going to do it 2 times. And tensors layer, that will be under the default layer. Hidden lines, it doesn't really matter that much. I'm just going to say okay. Go to the top view by control tabbing, and I'm going to move this to the side. And that's what's given. Go back to the same view. Click, and now I'm going to do only this one. You'll see why in a second. Make 2D and the same criteria. Go back to the top view. I'm going to move it and just snap to those two. Don't really need these things anymore unless you're introducing a rendering. I don't think I did renderings for this. It's just pure diagram. I'm going to delete those. And I think with this, I can do my thing now. So I can just select that, export selected from the top view always. And I'm just going to create a folder here that I can delete afterwards. Let's say V2 text. And we need an Illustrator file. And this is diagram 1. This is the, in this case, I don't need any viewport boundary or anything, just whatever I see I want, and then I can scale it properly. Illustrator, say okay, back to Illustrator. Want to say in new file, or I can actually say open, but probably it's better to start with a particular file. So when you create a new, that's the size it's going to be utilizing. Okay, I can do open. Go to desktop. There you go. Control C. I'm just going to bring it into this file because actually I don't need to, but whatever, just another reminder of best practice. When you do a Control V, Control P, Control C, Control V, meaning paste now, there's this thing that you have to be, at least one time when you start working in Illustrator, and then later on doesn't matter, is to make sure that you have a paste remember later. Otherwise, when you do, if that's not checked, like now, and I do Control V, layers from this other file are not coming in, which is something that we need. So you need to remember at least the first time to say paste remember layers, and then Control V and the layers come. Okay, so let's imagine this is my page. I don't know how many diagrams. Let's imagine I have just a bunch of them. Here are the layers. Let's read about, it says make 2D, two visible curves, hidden visible curves. There are two types because there's also the square. The red one is going to be on the bottom, and then visible on the top. Okay, is there any hidden, which is probably just the little one there. It's going to be grayscale for sure. Double click there, make it light. And you definitely want to create, actually I might just delete it. I didn't want any of that, but anyway, it's just 2 and 2. See how that looks. Yeah, I'm gonna just either hide or I don't need it. I'm gonna select now the visible one by clicking on the circle. It's gonna be a little thinner. Maybe black is perfect. And I don't need to do much more to that. The other layer is going to be the hidden one, so that's going to be gray and definitely thinner. And then that's 2 or something like that. Oh, so it's a little of what we're talking about, no? It's simple, no complications. I'm not even going to delete this one. I don't really need it, so delete this layer. Where is it? Delete. No. Yes, I don't need it. I probably can delete this one too. Okay. Now there's a couple of diagrams or little things I can just create myself. I can create a new layer, call it something like lines or something like that, something straightforward. And I'm going to use the pen tool. That's why I explained it back then, because I think it's very useful to do polylines and any kind of thing. So instead of, a couple of things you can do with the pen tool, you can actually start like a line from a geometry, but that will merge it to the geometry. So I typically just go a little bit above. So this is its own geometry. Okay, I can put it there. That is going to be under lines, and it's going to be diagrammatic. So something like, let's just say red. I have blue in the other one, is more friendly, but I'm just going to show you a different option. No dash 9. And then again, with Illustrator and InDesign, you have the arrows, and you can just choose the one you like, and you can flip those and see how that looks. It could be, because more of a diagram, it could be even thicker. And you could even say that at the end you have a little circle or something. Okay, select parts, select this part, so I can move that part along. Because again, remember, if I do V, which is the other selection, I will be selecting and moving the whole thing. I want to select only that part and bring it exactly on top of this. So it feels like I'm holding it and taking it out, no? Okay. I could just select this one, obviously, and press Alt or Control C, Control V to copy. Put another one right there. I think it's a bit up on top of the drawing, so I can go A, select that point, and take a little bit further up. And we'll do the same to this. Simple, I think. I use red, and I think that one didn't have little circles. Oh, it does, but smaller. And this goes down. I could create another one. I could just press Alt, copy this one. I can rotate by going next to the bounding box. Press Shift to make it ortho, and keep Shift on while I rotate. That's 90 degrees. And then with the V, put it where I want it. I can even use the arrows on it. That makes sense. Any thoughts on this? I think it's straightforward. Questions? Is everybody there? Is anybody there?
I have a question.
Tell me.
Sometimes when I export selected from Rhino as an Illustrator file, when I open it in Illustrator, it shows the artboard like this, but the thing that I exported is super far off the artboard, and I frequently can't even select it to move it back onto the artboard. Do you know why that would be happening?
Yeah. Wish there was a pause for the recording. This is like a little dummy. I think you should check that when you do export selected and you say Illustrator, it might be the case. I know that is somewhere here in the AI Illustrator AI export options for sure. So the question is, what is it that you're doing that is making that situation? And it has happened to me many times in the past that when you do preserve model scale, it's 1:1.
Mm.
1:1 means that if the drawing here in Rhino is, let's say, 3 feet, this sounds small, 3 feet, but if you think of the paper size in Illustrator, that's letter size, so that's less than a feet. So it's basically 3 times the size of the paper. So it really depends on this criteria, the scale.
Okay.
So that's why the snapshot of current view, in my opinion, is the best option, because what it's doing is taking what you see, and that's what comes when you open it.
Okay. Yeah,
It
that's
is
probably it.
the idea of preserving scale model is very important, but it will become important later on when we have a plan, for example, in Rhino, and we want to take it to Illustrator, and we say, hey, preserve scale model, but I want 1 inch to be, 1/16 or something. So then you can bring numerical changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thought?
That happened to me a bunch. I had to, like, it just wouldn't show up in the Illustrator file, and then I switched it to, I think, DWG when I exported instead of AI, and then it, like, always showed up. So that's another option.
No. So if I select from the top view this drawing and I say export selected, and there's many options. The vector base options are, well, you can do PDF even, but the most common ones are Illustrator, but also AutoCAD. And DWG is probably the better option, is more for Exchange, so you can send it to other software. DWG files, and we'll talk about AutoCAD a bit in the coming days, is a great, AutoCAD was here before anybody else. It's almost like I don't know how to call it. It's not the dinosaur yet, because dinosaurs have disappeared, but they were the first ones. You can think of it as the cellular program that started all, and is still dancing around the world. And some claim maybe DWG may die because there will be an earthquake and the software planet, and you will disappear because it is not relevant anymore, but still used by many offices. Anyways, the first First, let's call it CAD software. So if you take it to DWG AutoCAD, you most probably can open it in Rhino, 3D Max, in SketchUp. You can open it in Illustrator. You can open it in anything that you can think of. Probably will be accepting AutoCAD because AutoCAD was there before the other existed. So they all wanted to have an AutoCAD, invitation. So yeah, if you save it to the AutoCAD, you could just open it directly with Illustrator. And then when you open Illustrator, it will tell you, hey, what scale do you want? So there's another window setting there for the scale value that you might want to consider. Let me see if that works. So DWG, so test one under two test, and I'm gonna, well, that's one thing as well. You can export DWG in many ways. You can probably set the default, but set polylines and solids and lines. Say okay. And in theory, if I go to Illustrator, just Control O, open that DWG and see if that works. And again, another window. Well, what is the scale that you want? And scale by what? And so there's another decision that you have to make here. Original size, scale to fit upward. So this is a great opportunity to say, hey, I just don't care about scale. I just want to make sure that it fits the outboard. So you say, okay. And there it is. It's exactly fitting the artboard. And the artboard is the one that we've been using. So, and the layers come perfectly. So that's another option. DWG, export, default, and then fit to artboard. It comes with layers and you can manipulate it here. You can copy paste from now on into different places. Either way, it's exactly the same. Save this one. Just call it diagrams. I think I said it by mistake as PDF, which is, as I mentioned last class, pretty much the same as Illustrator, but you probably want to save it as Illustrator because that's the software you're using. So all diagrams. Enter. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be placing here stuff. So I'm going to do just this one just to see if it's about another. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to delete this one. Go to this setting. I'm going to copy this here. We probably want to keep the same scale. When you do a make to D, there's all these layers and sub layers under make to D. So you can always, if you delete the make to D stuff that I had over here, you can purge. And purge is like the film, you just get rid of the weak ones. So basically, in the context of software, is eliminating anything that is not of value, so that doesn't have material or geometry in it. So that cleans a little bit your layer settings. Say okay, and there you go. Only the things that I'm working on, which is the default layer, and that layer one, which is the red one. Everything else out of the question, which is could be good. Okay, so right now, what would I do to do this other diagram here? So I will probably create a couple of lines or curves, and then do some trimming. So I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to do a curve. I'm going to just place a curve without snapping to anything, just on top of it. Enter. And then I'm going to do another one here. Okay, so let me go to a 3D so you can see what's going on. I did those lines first from the top view without snapping. I know as I click those lines or curves are going to stay in the C plane, so I know that they correspond precisely with the plane, so I can start doing trimming. Trim. Now trimming in Rhino is trim line to line curve to curve, but also curve to surface and so on. So I can select trim, cutting objects. If I select these two guys as cutting objects and then press enter, I can select the middle area of the surface and it's being cut. No, escape that, trim again, select these two, enter. There you go. I don't really need the curves anymore, so I'm going to delete them. Let's just imagine that's the situation. So I'm going to go to the same view, double click. Because it's an isometric, I can pan to that and it's not really changing the angle. I'm not really orbitating. Orbitating is different. That would be a problem. If I go there, I can pan. I'm not changing the orbitation. I'm just changing the location of the same view. So now I can select these two, make 2D, view. I really don't think I need hidden lines. So viewport rectangle doesn't really matter. Okay, comes like that. I don't need that guy, but anyway, and export. And again, we could do the DWG, or I particularly think Illustrator makes more sense, but it doesn't matter. I'll say diagram 2. Same stuff. Go back to Illustrator, Control O as in open, diagram 2, open. And then I can do Control C to copy, bring it here, Control V. If you want to precise or suppose as you can scale, you move it up. Control V. Remember moving. Sometimes when you want to move something and you click outside of the geometry, you think you're moving and you're not, and you select something else and you say, well, how do I select all this stuff? Oh, that's a problem. You could select this one, but it's going to select the other layer. Sometimes it's just better to go back, Control C, and then Control V again and make sure that you're on top of the geometry and you move it out so you can select it properly. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Scale it precisely to the same scale as the other drawing. Press Shift as I move it, so it's snapping a line into orthogonal. And this layer, I'm just going to go to the visible one. And now what I'm going to do is select the things. This is the tool. I stands for eyedropper, which means that whatever you selected, you can match the properties of something else that you select now. Select that. And all of these things that I have selected will match the line weights and everything from this setting on. So now I could reference the origin. I could bring a square here and do the same as I did before, but I can also just draw this because it's very simple. I can snap and snap. Let's see that work. No.
Can you show us how to do the eyedropper thing one more time?
Sure. I'll keep it simple. The occasion is, imagine I have this line, just one, and it's clearly not what I want. It's just to exaggerate. It's so I need this line to be the same as this black line. You can do two things. One is select it and start, oh, what was it about? Okay, it's this thickness and this dash line, but you have this kind of eyedropper to match properties. And that is, there's always a match properties in every software. In this case, I shortcut for eyedropper. Okay, so notice the drawing, you can say, you know, basically match the properties of this second selection. So number one, select the object that you want to change. I shortcut, then go with the eyedropper and the other one selected to the thing you want to match it to. So you select this and it matches the second selected one. Now, with one, you could spend some time changing and making it the same. But if you have a bunch of them, like this one's could be, again, funky and you want to change those. So you can just select the entire layer by clicking here or select a bunch of those. And that's when, it makes more sense because you change a lot of things just with one click. So I select all of these elements or all of these layer, eyedropper, and then I match them to the second selection and it changes all. Then escape. Yeah.
Nice, thank you.
So I'm going to do a couple of lines. I'm going to use the line command here. Can go from here to here. And you'll see why in a second. Those might have to be in a different layer because it makes sense. So here. And here I'm going to do the same. I'm going to select those three and this one. So I'm matching those three lines I selected to the dash line here. Also, I'm trying to keep up, the same layer. All of the visual ones stay the same. Then I can select this guy, copy with the Alt, rotate it. I don't remember exactly what I was doing here, but I think it was meant to look like a scissor. I'm going to copy this again. Rotate it a bit. B to move. And then I can use A and select only that point as if it's cutting. Okay, more or less. So it's the idea of it was a rectangle plane, but I cut it. So let's do this one, for example. I think it's minus. This is like Boolean operations. I cut away from my geometry with this other object. This is like more carving diagram. So let's go back to Rhino. I'm going to delete the make 2D material. Go Control Tab to the perspective, just to have a reference of size. Because I don't know the scale of things, but I want them to be the same size. So I copy this plane there. And I need a cube. You can just do a box command and do this, click, and then click again outside on the right button. It will use the same as the XY. It will implement that XY to the Z. You can also just do, if you want, distance, and say what this is precisely 3 feet and 8 inches. Well, I do an extrusion of that, but why would you do that? If you can do a box command, click base, and then it says press enter to use width, meaning the width will become the height. So right click, and there you go. Now underneath that box, still this guy is there. I don't want it. I just want this, and I'm gonna leave it as it is. Now for the diagram, I need a sphere. So sphere. I'm gonna click there, and I can do it more or less. I guess I don't remember if it was. Let's see. Bit more than half. I don't know if that I think it's a bit bigger. I can scale this, pressing shift, so it really is more impactful. So anyways, have two geometries there. And the Boolean operations, there are many Boolean operations. They're all located under this tool. Boolean operations require two solids that are actually intersecting each other, so it doesn't work if one is here and the other one is there. They need to be intersecting. So a relationship of solids is needed. And you can either add those two and turn them into one solid with the Boolean union. If I do 1 and 2 and enter, they look the same. But if I go to the wireframe view, this, you can tell that the box has been eaten and that the sphere has been eaten. So in a way, it's a one. If you were to pour in water into this thing, it will start feeding this, and it will join the water into the sphere. It will go up the sphere. So it's like one, let's say, container with a weird shape. I'll go back, Control C. Now we have sphere and box. So you have other options, the Boolean difference. You can select first the box, enter, and then the sphere. And what it does is the sphere eats away from the box. Or you can select the other way around. So you can say difference, first the sphere, enter, and then the box. And the box eats from the sphere. That's the Boolean difference. And Boolean intersection, you can imagine what that is. You select 1 and 2, enter. And what it gives you is the space between the two, no? That common ground intersection. It's also called a split. This is a mix of difference and intersection. It does both at the same time. So you can select that. And these two, and it feels like it doesn't do anything, but then you separate them and you can see, oh, it didn't do anything. Okay, so now we have the sphere, the split, and the Boolean difference all in one. Go back. In our case, we just want a simple difference, selecting the cube first, enter, and then the other one. But I do want to keep the sphere around because I will use it as the ghost in my diagram. Let's go. So I'm going to just copy this sphere. There's one sub option which I like is the in place. Basically, is to copy something exactly in the place where it is. And I'm going to go and say, I'm going to put it in a different layer. Let's say there, sphere, something like that. So right click, change object layer. And I'm going to give another color. So I know what's cooking there. And I got to turn it off because it is there again. There it is. I don't want to turn off the thing while I do the Boolean difference. There you go. I can turn it on again. There it is. Now I need this guy to be just a dash line. So I'll do it in two phases. I will do turn off this, go to the view, and because I'm not changing the view, select make to the. I don't think I'm using hidden lines, so it's okay. And the view, let me close this guy. Well, I'm not doing after. Okay, that's straightforward. Go back to the top view, move things around. Good. Go back to the perspective, go to the layers, turn on the green guy and turn off the default. Just be careful. You can't turn off a layer that you're working on. So I want to turn off the default layer here, but there's no light bulb here, so it's a little tricky, So what I do is say, well, first, let's work on diagram sphere. The check goes there, and then I turn off this one. Go back to the view, pan, but no orbitating. Select make 2D and scene plane. Sometimes you can do the scene silhouette here. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, it should be as simple as that. So move from this point. In this case, something's not working, as you can see. So, and it makes sense because I moved I panned around in a different way in one make to these. So, but what I can do is just, again, it's a diagram. It's not a precise drawing, so I don't really need to be super respectful of the relationship between parts. When we do plans and sections, that would be a different story, but I can just put this one here and that should do it. So I'm going to select those two, export selected, Illustrator, say diagram 3. Okay, go back to Illustrator, Control O for opening, diagram 3, open, close this old one. B to select all, Control C, back here, Control V, move it around, maybe to that point, so we can scale this. And again, we're dealing with diagrams, so it's not really that of a problem to not be precise, no? So we don't need to do a numerical scaling, we just need to be as close as we can and then move this shift. There you go. Okay, so this curve will be the visible red here, so I'm gonna and select, oh, it's not that, sorry, it's, yes, is that. So I'm gonna do this, make a dash line, and all of this layer, just to confirm they're gonna be the same as here. Okay. That's simple. I don't know. I think I did something else there. I don't remember. A circle and a minus. I guess you can do that here by creating a little ellipse. Zooming there, going back, a little circle by pressing shift. Otherwise, it will be an ellipse. So you can press shift to circle. You can put that as line work or, you know, the other drawings. No, sorry, as lines. Here you go. And I'm going to do those in red. So match properties, this one. And then there's a minus. I could do that as a line, or I can write down whatever it is. Easier. Probably a line makes more sense. Select that, and that could be just a little bit thicker. Meaning minus, not subtracting. Okay, so that's that. Any thoughts there in the virtual world? Yeah. Again, simple diagrams. You get the idea. I think there's. I remember doing, you know, for example, these are more deforming a 3D. Those are made of two things. We can do this one as the last one. So one is a box, and then there's the box again, made dash, and then a curve thing that could be a bit more tricky. But you'll see how we can do that, I think, effectively. Let's see. Rhino, delete the line work, go back to the 3D, turn on the dash line, maybe work back there, purge between the layers, all out. I'm going to use this box, press Alt and the arrow, drag it out. Actually, that's not going to work because that's not the one. I'm going to do another box, snap, snap, snap. So there you go. Remember that when you select something in Rhino, it's a bit annoying, but it's useful once you get to know what's going on. If you select something that has two things on top, it pops up the selection menu and it's like, what is it that you want? It's Rhino asking, do you want this poly surface, the one, this chop? Do you want extrusion? Or you say, I want this one. And you can, it does you a preview, which is very useful. I want this guy, and then move it around. Then move it far away. Because I need another box right next to it. So these are going to be partners. Maybe they need to be a little closer. One is going to be simple as that, circle in 3D. We will write that in this circle. This curve will be done in Illustrator. This we have to deform in Rhino. So let's see how we can do that. This idea you can select parts of an object. I talked about it last class. You can Control Shift to select edges, move those. You could press surfaces and move those. You can Control Shift vertices, so you can move those as well. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, but if you say Control Shift the surface, and then you move that, and then you take this here, but then you also, while selecting the surface, you rotate it. That did not work. So that could be a different information, but I thought it was going to be doing this curvy thing. So that did not work. We have to think a different way. Maybe go back. Well, what I would do, maybe a rectangle. We'll put it as the base for that square. Delete this one because that did not work. And what I'm going to do is an extrusion along a curve or a sweep one rail. What the hell is that, Professor? Sweep one rail, you probably saw it last class, last semester. If you have two curves and you think of, I want to take this curve and make it like an extrusion along another curve. So I can do a line. Very cool. And rebuild this. Just it's a weird way to get to where I want to go, but anyway. So I can do that as a curve. Okay, so I can do a sweep. One rail. This is, think of a train, and this is the section of a wagon, and then it goes the train along that rail. No? That's why it's called rail. So you say sweep one, it says, hey, select the rail. The rail is this guy. Oops. And after you select the rail, it says select the sweep shapes, basically the shape of your train in a way. Select that one, press enter when done, and enter. And it does this thing, no, where that shape is taken along the curve to create a sweep. Another thing you can do is called extrude along a curve, extrude curve along a curve, which is basically a sweep one. We just say that, select curves to extrude, this one. The typical extrusion, as you know, it goes vertically, that's extrusion, but you can extrude along a curve. You press enter when you're done, and then you say, well, select the path, curve near start. You can create a solid out of it, you can do it afterwards. Select the path. So what happened here is basically that this curve starts here and ends here. So it's extruding along the curve downwards. You can flip the curves. Flip the curve. It's kind of weird, but that's just as simple as that. And then you can do it through extrude along the curve. Select the curves to extrude. Enter when done. Select the path. Up. That didn't work out. It was going down. Thought I flipped it. Anyway, I think the sweep one is the one we want, because I don't know if you notice that it creates this kind of a weird shape. It's not really what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is select this curve and move it to the center of that square. And I'm also going to scale it from that point to make it fit the logic of my drawing, my diagram. So I'm going to do sweep one, select rail, and select shape, enter, enter. There you go. Now, when you do a sweep, it doesn't do a solid. You can cap any open set of surfaces as long as the caps, the openings are perfectly flat. So you can say cap. That's this thing where it closes the top and the bottom. Now I can get rid of the curve because otherwise it will come without us in the make 2D. I mean, it's a little bit like too monstrous. Maybe what I could do is go back and make this curve even smaller, so it's less scale. One, select rail, shape, enter, enter, tap, delete stuff. Okay, those look more adequate. So let's go to the view. So again, I can go here. I need the box also there. Copy here, so it's almost like they're two on the same place. Just to go there, but without orbitating. And then selecting, maybe these two guys can go a little further away so we see the whole thing. Could that good? I don't know, because these ones are more aligned to the bottom. Should we do this thing? Maybe it makes more sense. Yeah, why not? Okay, so I have this, because I could have placed them aligned, but in this case, I think it makes more sense. I'm going to put the curve here. So like the folding diagram thing. Okay, I'm going to do this too. First, no, these two first. These are the visible things. So I want them later on to be just black. And we make 2D. I go these guys here. Go back. Select this one. 2D view. Back to the top view. Here to here. I don't need this boundary anymore. So problem. Sorry. Let me go back. So that should be in a different layer. Otherwise, it's going to be a pain later on to select things around. So I'm going to say layer one, right click, change up to layer and make it to the selected. Enter. Move with the M command. It's going to be easier to select the thing here. So I can select those two. For selected. Diagram 4. Okay. Go back to Illustrator, Control O for opening. Diagram 4. B, select. Control B goes on top of something. This is the issue of not controlling your scale values numerically. You have to kind of do some work here. Just holding the arrows and making this as precise as possible. But there's a point where your diagram is bigger than the situation here, so you can always just select all of these things with shift, scaling them down. Deactivate the project now. Select all of these guys. I drop to match everything. Select all of these guys, and then I drop to match the dash line. And what I did here is what? An arrow and a 3D. Okay, so we can do hand tool. Start here, leave press to that line. Leave press. And this can match I drop these guys. The I drop does not match the symbols of verb, so you need to go unfortunately generate those again. And what I could is copy this circle here, a little bigger. Write a text T 3D. I don't know if that's the type of the font that we want, but that's just there's different things, whatever it is that you're using. In diagrams, you probably want to be also respectful of the font. So that's definitely too small. So double click on the text and make it just as big as you can or you want. It's too big now. Yeah, so the way you can make this a bit smaller so it doesn't bother. And obviously the colors, you enter the text and you change this color here to make it the red that you want. I don't remember why it said 3D. I think there was also some other deformations in 2D. That's why that symbol appears. But, oh, that's kind of diagramming using Rhino if you're doing some of those things. Sometimes you can just jump into Illustrator and do diagrams in Illustrator. No need for Rhino at all, to be honest. Some of these things, like maybe this one especially, it's very easy to do in Illustrator. But, you know, the three-dimensional maybe makes more sense to use Illustrator a little bit. It could be with other 3D software. Ultimately, Illustrator makes very elegant, you know, vector-based drawings, and you could potentially color things. No, so you could just say, well, let me get rid of, just hide for now the lines, and then I'm gonna color this box. The left-hand bucket is the K command. K command works by first deselecting something. After you select K, shortcut for light pen bucket. And then what you can do is that what it does is merges or joins all of the geometry. And then you can just, let's say, color using whatever you have here. You have to think of coloring not just fill, but also the edges. So if you want that, could be black. And then the fill could be like blue, and you can start painting with that color. If it works, let me see what's going on. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I think it's because I never selected the whole thing. Okay. Oops. Again, selecting everything. Okay. And painting. Yeah. So you can choose the color of that and paint with those colors. So that allows you to create very kind of a vector-based type of coloring schemes. So but they look, I think, they look quite nice. We will see if this works. We will see gradients later on. So you can actually go to the hatches. You can, let's see, I'll do it in a rectangle first, or a circle. You select the closed geometry. You can create a, you know, shading in the interior, and then you can say it needs to be a gradient, and I think the gradients are set here. There you go. So you click on the gradient, and this opens up this possibility of changing a gradient feature in that. And this other tool allows you to change the gradient direction and intensity. So this is to change the direction and intensity of the gradient. It's great. And this is to assign a gradient under gradient options. So it's slightly similar. You can also change that here, and notice how it changes there. This is just more of a manual way to do it. Now in gradients, there's three types. One is the linear, and again with this tool you set the direction and the intensity very easily. But it's also under the gradient properties, you have this center gradient that you can also change, the intensity, but it all starts from a point. So with this tool, you will set the origin of that gradient, center gradient, and the intensity of it. Great. And then the one that we will be using for some other diagrams later on our more architectonic building diagrams, you could set what is called multiple points gradient. And those are just, you can click there and start setting different points. You can move those and choose the intensity of each of the points. You can add lines, you can delete points, you can, if you click outside of that, you can, set those and change the point coloration for that. So those are great. You can do very sophisticated, I guess, gradient opportunities in any drawing. You can also create lines. Let me see if it works. And this line, we changed the thing. You have to go and change each of the points of the line, which is kind of crazy, but that's what it is. So I can select this point and make it, for example, yellow. So that point would be yellow, but I can start changing the coloration of each of the points. And if one of the points of a line are yellow, then you can think of almost, for example, a path. Well, that didn't change. Happen. Imagine doing a diagram of a person walking along a space in plan, and you want to showcase that fluidity of person's movement. So we will see this more times. Don't worry if it's not sticking yet, but because I think it will be very useful to do this type of diagrams later on. We're actually doing building design. You get the idea. So there's isolated points. Those isolated points can have their own color. Or you have continuous lines. When you escape this thing, you have at the end a quite, interesting and sophisticated gradient value, which for some of your projects could be interesting. Imagine heat maps in a plan, or imagine public versus private, fluidity or movement or density, blah, blah, blah. Those type of diagrams, explanatory diagrams could benefit from having a gradient like this. Anyway, I'm not saying everybody needs a diagram, but I think it could be useful for you guys if you try to integrate one of these diagrams into your 1A, second panel. Any questions or thoughts? Is everybody sleeping? Coffee? Olivia, for you.
I just wanted you to know I was here.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I trust you here. And I also don't mind if you take a little walk. Okay. So yeah, there was this last thing I want to talk about is this control save your work at every single step. I haven't emphasized this enough, but computers, laptops, whatever, they crash often, and you don't want to be in that position where things fail and you haven't saved the work. So I just recommend you control S all the time as much as you can, especially in the non-online based softwares. The online, they're saving, it's done automatically, but in this more computer softwares are not. So control S, every single move you do. If it's a very difficult diagram or drawing, maybe you want to even save as and give it a date, like the one, or number 2, number 3, so you have different files that you can rely on. And then I wanted to talk about what do we do with this? Well, this could be in your panel. If you have a panel in Illustrator, and this is where you're working to present next week on Tuesday, you're just going to have, like, let's say new, and I think it's 24 we're talking about. So print, and then let's say 1A, and under inches 24, tab 24. You probably want 2 artboards. I don't know how. If you're using Illustrator, this would be the situation. No? So you have images, you place them as you know with the place option, but you can also just copy and paste these guys here. You could even paste in place, but because it's a completely different paper size, doesn't really matter. You can just move it around. The layers come with you, but you can do one thing, which is a new layer, call it diagram or something like that. So it's more of the big guy of the room, and you can take all of this stuff, select first, shift, select the last one, selects everything, and then you can drag it inside of that other layer. So then you have basically a layer and 3 sub layers. That way you can select everything by clicking on the main layer and then move it around, or you can select parts of a layer. Now, I think this is useful to be able to select groups without having to group. You can group things. You can select stuff, Control G, but it's not the same thing. It groups everything under one sublayer. So I'm not a fan of groups unless they're within the same layer. I like sublayering and being able to select the layer, because you can then lock the main layer altogether. In this, nothing you can do to select the whole thing. Then if you want to move, you select the entire main layer and then move it around, scale it or whatever you want. And then lock it so nothing interferes with that. If something steps on top of it from another world, let's say this line, then you want to select it, you can't select the other one, no matter if you try. So that's the way. Unlock, select, scale is gonna be here, for example. Lock again, new layer, let's call it text. And that could be your labels or whatever, and do a text here. You can put a little text here saying diagram of blah, 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 blah. Control A to select it all. Make sure the font is the one you really like. And the size of the labels are all identical. You're presenting digitally on the screen that we have on our computer. Maybe we go to the conference rooms, I don't know. But I would like you to think, what is the ideal font size for printing and seeing the panels as if they were printed? Okay. So you say, well, tell us the number. I want to know the font size because I don't want to think about this thing. So it's not so easy like anything in this life. You create a font size for labels, let's say, of a drawing or a photo reference, and you say 12. 12 is the smallest thing you can think of for easy reading at a distance of a book. So this distance, more or less. 12 is good. So if you say, well, I want people to look at my board, and I want them to step up, look at the diagrams and read the labels, 12 is good. If you want somebody to engage with that text from a distance, let's say a crit is sitting a little bit, on their chair, and you're presenting, like more of to the public, well, nobody's going to see that 12. That's clear, no? You probably want to take it to 14, 16, 18, depending on that distance. But then digital is a completely different discussion because it depends on the size of the screen. So 12 might be good, might be small, depending on the screen or the projector, etc., etc. I'm a fan of forcing people to stand up and making them work so they have to stand up and read the thing. I like the 12 as labels and then from there up. So main titles of your, let's say, fashion designer here would be much bigger, of course. That could be like a 48 or 60 or 72, depending on also the style of your panel. It might be more graphic design style where they're big bold letters occupying 50% of the screen. I don't know. So it really depends on the style as well that you're looking for. But I would do say that you have to be consistent with the style that you're interested in. So if it's a graphic design, big bold letters, then be consistent throughout the presentation. I know that many of you tend to do I don't know, some background cool things here, you know. Maybe this is not the thing. And let's imagine, and I think you know what I mean. Oh, many of us have used those templates from PowerPoint and they have like whatever curves in the background, and those are backgrounds. So backgrounds are okay, maybe if you have a flashy beginning point. But when you start having diagrams, especially plans, and if you do this, like my background is behind my diagrams, I think that is not as elegant. I mean, it might be elegant as a painting in a way, like this looks beautiful, but it's not allowing us to engage with the diagrams or with the drawing. So it is just disrupting my relationship with this drawing. So it is not, I think, as logical, maybe, even if it's beautiful in your mind. If you can't look and understand a drawing because of a background, that background is not doing a great job. So just think about it carefully. So that's the world of Illustrator. You have all kinds of things that you can insert, but if you wanted to use InDesign, which is typically the one I will work with, I would save this component as a PDF. So I would say save as. I will do PDF of diagrams. I'll save it. New file. You probably have it already, but it's going to be printed. Inches 24. Tab 24. It's actually made 2 pages. I don't want them to be facing. Let's create. Zoom out. You have those 2 pages here. You can see the pages here. You can click on one or the other one. You have the properties panel as well. And then what I would do is, well, the text is here, blah, blah, blah. Hello. You have under properties here all of the settings for size of the font and all these things. So again, whatever font you want, etc., etc. And then you will place that PDF. You could place the InDesign as well. I think it's the same, but PDF maybe. So come on. I don't know. Whatever. It's exactly the same thing. You decide. You can place this by one click, and it comes exactly at the scale that you created the Illustrator. Or because they're diagrams and it doesn't really matter the scale too much, I can just click and place it however I want. I can also really crop this guy because it doesn't really matter. So by it, and then I can put this to move around. I don't have to be on top of the geometry because it's like an image. I can put it wherever I want. T for label. Hello, labels, blah, blah, blah. Then again, the same question applies. What is the font? What is the size of this? And you can accommodate a criteria. Remember that this looks horrible, but it's just a preview, so it's not a problem. It's just that it's trying to allow you to help in a smoother way without occupying so much memory. So you can always go right-click, display performance, selecting the image and say high quality, although I recommend that you do a typical display. Okay, so this at the end you have text, photos, and whatever, and then you will just say export in Illustrator and in InDesign, sorry, and you will set the PDF print, Rhino 1A, export. This guy, let's go to desktop. There we go. And final one is a PDF. If I open it, that PDF